Hello, this is Mrs. Kohler, and today we are going to talk about the cell cycle. We're actually going to talk about why and how cells divide. So, if you remember from last unit, we talked about cell theory, and part of that was all cells come from other cells. So in this section, we're going to talk about the difference between the two types of reproduction and why cells divide. So why do cells divide? Well, there's three main reasons. And if you look on your note sheet, there's actually 3 bullets there. So you're going to want to use the 3 bullets for the 3 reasons I'm giving you. The first is to grow or get bigger. You don't want just one gigantic cell making up your whole body. It's too hard to get things to where they need to be. A lot of little cells are a lot more efficient, so getting bigger. Repair, if you have some sort of a wound and you need to repair it, or if you just have cells that are worn out and are dying, you can replace them. And also reproduction, making new organisms. So those are the 3 reasons that cells divide. Now, the first type of reproduction is asexual reproduction. And if you'll remember, whenever there's an A in front of a word that you know, it usually means not. So asexual reproduction is not sexual. So it's only involving one cell. So one cell basically duplicates itself and it duplicates its genes and then divides. So the offspring that are produced, offspring would be your babies. Offspring, babies. They're going to be identical to each other as well as identical to the parent because they're all getting the exact same DNA. Now, who does this? Bacteria do it, and they do it through a special process called binary fission, which we'll talk about in a minute. Plants are really good at asexual reproduction, and some salamanders do this as well. So if you look here, you have a strawberry plant, and this plant is putting out runners, and along the runner, new roots will start to grow. Now, if you were to cut this runner, this baby plant has its own roots, so it can exist on its own, but it's got the same genes as the mother plant. That's asexual reproduction. And this is binary fission for bacteria. In sexual reproduction, you have 2 parents involved. Half of the DNA comes from each parent, so half from mom, half from dad. And the offspring are genetically different from the parents. They're also different from each other unless they're identical twins. So most multicellular animals do this, and plants do this as well. Plants can actually do both. So here you have your sperm joining the egg. That's sexual reproduction. And a bee pollinating the flower. The pollen is the male part, and then the pistil is the female part. So the cell cycle is sort of like the cell's calendar in that there's certain things that happen repeatedly at certain times. So we're going to talk about the cell cycle for a couple minutes. So you don't have to copy this. There's a simplified diagram on your note sheet. But as you can see, the cell has a lot of different phases. So there's interphase, and within interphase, there's 3 other phases that are a part of it. And then there's cell division, and cell division includes mitosis and cytokinesis, and the mitosis has other phases that are inside of it. So the first thing we're going to do is show you the 3 major stages, and you're going to want to label these. So the 3 main phases are interphase, the mitotic phase, and cytokinesis. So interphase is this part of your diagram. It's basically the longest part of the cell cycle. It's the biggest. Then there's the mitotic phase, which is up here. And then there's cytokinesis, which is here. So within interphase, there are 3 subphases, and you have 3 bullets on your note sheet. So the first stage of interphase is called G1, and the G stands for growth. So it's when the cell grows and performs its functions. And this is G1 right here. Second is S, and the S stands for synthesis, DNA synthesis. And when you synthesize something, you make it. So it's when DNA is made. And the third is G2, more growth. And then it also prepares for cell division. So that's your G1, S, and G2. Now, at the end of G1 and G2, there's actually checkpoints that the cell has to go through. So here and here, the cell kind of does a self-test. And if there's damage to the DNA, the cell's not going to continue through the cell cycle. And this helps prevent mutations in your body. Cancer is a disorder where these checkpoints don't work properly and the cell divides even though it has damaged DNA. So then mitosis. Mitosis is when the nucleus divides. So the cell's DNA divides in half. And the 4 stages are prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and use the acronym PMAT to remember that, the order that they come in. So there's prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and make sure you copy those down. We'll talk later about what happens during each. And then at the end of mitosis and slightly overlapping it, you have cytokinesis. The cyto is like the cytoplasm, so it's when the cytoplasm divides. It's when the rest of the cell divides. So the cytoplasm of the cell divides in half in cytokinesis. And it starts happening just before mitosis ends. So an important thing to take note of is that the cell cycle includes everything. The cell cycle includes the growth, which happens in interphase, replicating the DNA. It includes mitosis, and it includes dividing the cytoplasm, which is cytokinesis. Mitosis is only this step here, dividing the DNA. All the other 3 steps are not part of mitosis, but they are part of the cell cycle.